This is Maker Geek, and I'm Dan. Over the last week or so, I've been working on a few different ideas to achieve some motion in my videos. This is what I've come up with. It is a linear slide using stepper motors to control motion in both kind of the back and forth, as well as I can have the camera tilt or twist back and forth. This started out as an attempt to just add my GoPro on top of something I already had. I had a pan and tilt rig that I built a while ago to do some face tracking, but I wasn't completely satisfied with the way that was working, and I spent a bit of time playing around hacking that together. I ultimately determined that one of my servos was not working. I took it to pieces, but I'm pretty sure that the speed control or speed feedback circuit's not working, so it was just a mess. And I could tell by switching the servos into different positions, and the working one always worked wherever I put it, and the broken one didn't work wherever it went. So I took some stepper motors off of what was a DIY CNC attempt. I'm probably going to rebuild that in the future anyway, and I came up with this. I can have it pan back and forth, but the panning at the moment is a little bit juddery. I need to fix that. In fact, I'll switch on the pan right now, and then you'll see what it looks like. This is it with the panning switched on. I've got the camera tracking kind of a little under 90 degrees per rotation, so it should be pretty much square on in the middle and twisted at either side ever so slightly. But as I'm sure you can tell from this video, it's just a little bit juddery, and I think that's because I'm running the stepper at a very low speed, and at that speed you really feel the steps. So at some point I will add a gear change ratio so that I can run the stepper at a higher speed but retain the slow rotation. For now, let's take a look at how it all works. So as you can see, there's a platform running on top of this what was a shelf, or a component of a shelf, a nice smooth surface. The platform itself is kind of cobbled together just to fit everything. So we have one stepper right here, which is rotating this to rotate to provide the pivot access, and another stepper here. So this stepper is driving the linear motion along this string. So I have one of these at each end, just a tensioner bolt, so I could tie the string on and then ratchet up to get a good bit of tension on here. So this is just wrapped around this component. So these are hand turned from Delrin, literally just turned pretty much to size, and then a little groove cut in just to give the string somewhere to go. And you can see there's a little grub nut spinning around there, just holding it on the spindle. Down here we have two V-wheels. I turned them initially with the outside profile, and then I just basically cut the interior sized for a standard bearing. It was a bit of a delicate operation, but then I could stick it over a bearing, and this is all just mounted on standard bolts with some nuts. Originally when I made this, I was thinking about using or buying some timing belt, much like you'd get in like a 3D printer, and then I realized I really didn't need to do that for the moment. This is just a regular piece of string that is just under some tension, just enough tension to provide grip so that when this turns around, the advantage of that is that if it does get stuck up, it just loses grip and the string just stops holding anymore, and everything kind of carries on going. The disadvantage is obviously if things going gets a little tough, then it can easily lose and just stop moving properly, but that's not super important for most purposes. For a time-lapse, what I did discover is it's kind of important that you want the motion to be very smooth and regular, because unregular motion really shows up in the final product. So at the moment the linear back and forth is pretty good. The twisting, you can kind of see how juddery that is. I think it's just running at too low of an RPM off of that stepper to give me a smooth motion, so we can fix that at a later point. As you can see at either end it is bouncing off, and that's just using a simple limit switch It literally just physically makes contact at the very end, and that sends the signal to the software to switch the rotation. At the back you can see this stick. This is very high tech. This just holds the wires away from the bearings and the wheels so it doesn't get caught up as it runs back and forth. That's just propped in place, doing the job. So with it not running, this is just a quick view of the undercarriage. The main thing is just this lump of wood here. It has 4 bolts running through it. On each side of the wood there's a setup which is just a nut and a washer and another nut to provide 8 wheels just to give it stability, and on the 2 central ones there's an additional V-wheel around a bearing and another nut to provide access for this. Then that's the bulk of the platform. In order to make everything stay on track, I just added these I guess outrigger type pieces with a bearing on a bracket at the end that just rub gently along this far side, and it stops it from pulling one way or the other. That seems to have worked pretty well. Here we have a couple of layers of wood. This was just to provide enough height so I could leave this stepper resting on the platform. Again, this is just a turned cylinder of Delrin, nothing special. It's just being held on the shaft. This is just a friction fit for I think this is a band out of a vacuum cleaner or something. Just enough that turning this turns the band. And again, friction around to this, which is this is something I turned a while ago actually. I think I had the idea that I was going to make a like a wooden tank drive type setup, but I've not got around to finishing that project yet. And then on top I just have this standard GoPro mounted. As you can see, it's kind of a slightly odd angle if I look at this. The reason for that is that when the GoPro is on it in its casing, the lens is fairly centered over the center of rotation, just to give it that nice feel of its pivoting around the lens rather than something else arbitrarily. That's it for the mechanical setup, and here you can see a couple of examples of the time lapses I've already been taking with this rig. I'm pretty happy with how they've gone, and I'm sure I'll be doing plenty more in the future. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, and if you subscribe, you'll be notified when my next video comes along, where I'll look at the electronics and the Arduino coding that I needed to do in order to make all of this work. Thanks for watching, see you next time.